Wow, wow, wow. People from all over the world. Hi, in India, in the UK, Vienna. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I think we can start, and people that are late will join as we go. Okay. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see this amazing turnout, much more than we expected. Okay, so I'm Dr. Lior Onn-Sorek. I'm a biologist, and currently I'm the team lead of QED Sciences scientific team. With me today are two unbelievably amazing participants, Dr. Angela Andersen and Professor Barak Rotblat. I'll introduce them shortly and then we'll start going. So Angela is a former cell editor and a co-founder and a co-CEO of Life Science Editors. It's a company that truly helps scientists turn their hard work into published papers, funded grants, and so much more than that. She also founded the Life Science Editors Foundation. It's a charity aiming to achieve equality in the scientific community. So important. Barak Rotblat is a brilliant principal investigator from the field of cancer biology. He's currently positioned in Ben-Gurion University, and he's been in all sides of grant application process, an author, a reviewer, a committee chair. So I don't think there are better people to get here to give us details on how to find weaknesses in your grants before the reviewers do, how to strengthen your applications, and how to balance the critique you get from AI with your own scientific judgment. Okay, before we begin, I have a few quick technical notes. The chat will be for short comments and reactions. If you want to ask our participants, our speakers, sorry, any questions, please use the Q&A, okay, not the chat, the Q&A. It will help us keep track with the questions, and you can also vote for the questions that you find interesting and you want our speakers to reply to. We will reserve about 10 minutes at the end of the session for these questions, but really feel free to submit them at any time and also to vote for the questions you find interesting. No need to wait till the end. The session is being recorded. We'll email you the recording with also a grant application checklist that we created with Angela and Barak. It includes practical do's and don'ts, and you can really use it when you submit your grant proposals. Okay, Angela, can you please press? Thank you. So our agenda for today, we'll begin with what reviewers are looking for when they first open your grant proposal. Angela will take us through the practical do's and don'ts for getting a state-of-the-art proposal with examples, of course, and show us how to take criticism and act upon it. We'll then discuss best practices for interpreting AI feedback, and Barak will share his PI perspective on stress testing, the science and feasibility. We'll finish with my take on responsible AI review, and I will also do a demo of a QED Science grant review tool, and we'll finish up with the Q&A session, as I said before. Okay, Angela, can you please press again? Thank you. Okay, so let's start with a short poll. Where are you in your grant process? We'll give it a few more seconds. I see we have people in all stages. It's really almost the same in all of them, which is great because I think that our discussion today will be relevant for pretty much every stage, from the idea to the actual submission. Okay, thank you, everyone. I will share the results. You can see them now, I think.
Yes.
Okay, great. So you can see almost evenly distributed. Okay, great. Angela, can you please continue? Okay, so the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me today, and it's so great to speak to all of you. Um, what I want to do in the next few slides is talk about the peer review process and writing for the reviewers, and finally identifying weaknesses in your proposal before you click submit. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that most grant proposals end up in this pool. Um, what the question that reviewers and editors, journals are asking is not so much separating the good science from the bad. Almost everything they see is good science. Rather, the question isn't, is this good? It's why do we want to choose this proposal or this paper? So often the answer to that question is in the writing. Um, your proposal is being compared to other scientists who are asking the same question, but using a different approach to solve it, or asking a different question, and you need or you need to show why your question is a more important one to answer than theirs. So, how do you stand out amongst the crowd? And what are reviewers looking for? Reviewers need to be able to skim your grant right from the start and answer these three important questions. This really is true for any mechanism. The first is, what's the gap? So you have to accurately show what we know, what we don't know, and highlight a specific gap. And it's very important that this be a specific gap and not just generic, we don't know everything about autophagy or we don't know everything about gene regulation. You need to identify a specific gap that you can then form a hypothesis from. The second question is, why is this an important gap to solve? And this is one that a lot of people overlook. There are lots of things that we don't know, and lots of things are very interesting, and it would be great to know them, but we need to prioritize what's important in terms of spending money on and solving. So, is this important for public health? Is this important therapeutically? Is this important to advance scientific knowledge or technology? And that needs to be articulated very clearly. And finally, why are you the lab to solve it? There are so many labs studying the same problem. What unique expertise do you have? What publications do you have in this field? What are your preliminary data? So the reviewer needs to be able to skim your proposal within 15 minutes and be able to answer these three questions. Um, so, and it's not just one reviewer. You have to remember that there are multiple reviewers that are answering these questions. Um, and the reviewers range in expertise from the generalist to the specialist. The generalist is still a scientist, but they're outside your field and they're focusing on the question, the big picture questions. So, why is this important? Have you created a logical narrative? And so they're making a decision on those big picture questions. And they lose you when you use jargon or have dense detail or overly nuanced explanations that they don't have the background to follow. And then on the other end of the spectrum is the specialist. And they're, of course, interested in the question, but they might be more easily convinced that this is an interesting question because it's in their field. They're scrutinizing the rigor and the feasibility and whether you've properly and accurately cited the literature. So they're deciding on those aspects of the proposal. And where you lose them is if you're overly superficial or overly simplifying explanations or hand waving away problems that deserve a little more consideration. So what you see is that this is a sort of tricky needle to thread in terms of being able to appeal to the generalist and the specialist in one document. And in fact, a lot of proposals that I see appeal to the specialist, and they're really detailed, and they really get in the weeds, and it's lovely for somebody that's in the field, but you lose that generalist perspective. And the study section and some of your reviewers are lost, and you won't be able to convince them. So, how do you write your proposal to multiple audiences at once? The first really important and obvious thing is to use good grantsmanship. The bare minimum is to use consistent formatting like fonts and not overuse it, to have good structure. So clear paragraphs with white space in between them so that it's not, your grant proposal isn't an overwhelming block of text. It should be something that the reviewer wants to read, even just looking at it. You want to have good grammar and fluent prose so that the document is easy to skim and easy to read. And I just wanted to make a point about fluent prose here because in this day and age of AI, it's very easy to generate fluent text that actually doesn't make a lot of sense. We can go down rabbit holes and generate paragraphs of text that you understand but aren't really comprehensible to someone outside your field and maybe even within your field. So what can happen is that the writing ends up in this frustrating, if not terrible, writing quadrant that's difficult to get through and makes the reader feel dumb, which is really what you don't want because the reviewer is your advocate, and if they don't feel smart, then they're not going to do a good job advocating for you. So you want to land here in the best writing, which is easy to read and makes the reader feel smart. And if the reader and reviewer feel smart, then they think you're smart and it's easy to advocate for you. And you do this by writing in plain English and having clear placeholders, so clear take-home statements at the ends of paragraphs and sections that a reader can hang their hat on and even pause. Now, so this is the bare minimum. How do you stand out? So you need to give the reviewer a reason to trust you for 5 years with a lot of money that you're going to generate results. And in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about how to do that. And you also need to write a proposal that's easy for that person to defend and advocate for in front of a panel of their colleagues in just 10 minutes. So to do that, you really, again, want to read the instructions carefully, the reviewer criteria, any questions that the reviewers are told to ask. You want to use that language and put clear sentences in your proposal that answer those questions so that the reviewer can lift those, put that into a presentation, and advocate for your proposal. Okay, so generating trust. The first place you do that is in the background or the state of the art, right when the proposal starts. And what I see a lot of people do here is a literature review or a literature dump, and it doesn't have like a smooth narrative. Instead, it feels like an opportunity to show that you've read everything. And this is not what you want to do. You want to have a narrative and a logical argument. And you want to answer these questions, which again come from those three main questions I mentioned earlier. So what do we know and what don't we know? And this highlights the gap in the literature. Why do we need to know this? That's the importance. Why don't we already know this? If it's so important, what's the barrier? Has there been, is there not the technology to solve the question? Have people been looking in the wrong place? Were we not aware of a particular cell type? Were we looking in a model that wasn't representative of the actual problem? So you want something clear here about what the barrier is. And that should lead directly to why your lab is the one to solve it. So we didn't have the technology. Our lab now has the technology. It has the tools. It has the resources. It has patient samples no one else's has. So something specific about your group that allows you to overcome this longstanding barrier. And then I've put a number of do's and don'ts over here. And the main take home from these is to be collegial, constructive, and thorough in your citing of the literature. So you want to cite primary literature, not just reviews, not cherry pick citations. You want to cite all relevant scientists, including your competitors, and engage with them diplomatically and be constructive when raising limitations. So don't insinuate or disregard or dismiss work done by others. Um, and again, you don't want to oversimplify or overcomplicate. So this all has to be done in a page and a half. And if you do this well, then you're on the way to establishing trust with your reviewer. Okay. The
Actually, we
next,
do have a question that maybe you would be interested in answering. It's slightly related
yeah.
to the size of the gap and the way you suggest to bridge it. We have an anonymous attendee asking, should one scale the extent of the gap with the scale of the funding? The bigger the call, the bigger the gap.
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. That makes complete sense. So, um, yeah, if it's a ERC advanced proposal over 5 years, then it needs to be um, a substantial gap that justifies that expense. That's a great question. And it shows that you're sort of judicious and aware of what you're asking for. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next place that you establish trust is in your preliminary data and in how you present that data. And in my experience, precision beats confidence all of the time. So, and what I mean by that is that I see a lot of vague statements or inferences, like what I've shown on the left here, which isn't a horrible statement. Let me say it's a good inference. Our preliminary data demonstrate that X promotes Y. Okay, that's very clear. But on its own, it doesn't tell me very much. Whereas the statement on the right is very clear. In cultured hepatocytes, loss of X reduced Y by 60%. And that can seem perhaps tedious, but in one sentence, it conveys what the model is, what the assay is, what the magnitude is. And so I would maybe use both of these, this to appeal to the generalist and this to appeal to the specialist. But for me, this is more than just showing your data and um, establishing rigor, it's establishing trust. And another thing you want to do in your proposal is not make the reviewers have to do any more work than they have to. And so, for instance, only having this statement on the left, now the reviewer has to go to the figure and figure out what you did. Um, so make it clear, um, and the reviewer will be happier to accept your statements. And the same rule applies to figures. So you want to show as much data as possible. This bar graph here on the left is supported by all of these different scatter plots on the right. So a symmetric distribution, a distribution with an outlier, bimodal distributions, or it's hiding unequal sample sizes. And when a reviewer sees this, I mean, some reviewers might be fine with it, but the risk is a reviewer that sees this and wonders, well, how many data points do you have? And what do those data points look like? And that reviewer who's scrutinizing it at that level is going to potentially infer that you've chosen not to show the data, or infer that didn't bother to, and not taking the time to do that. So these things are negative, and that can negatively impact the reviewer's impression of you and your work. So the fix is to always show the data and the statistics. And another important section where you establish trust is how you deal with potential risk and mitigate and the strategies you use to mitigate that risk. I frequently see a lot of people handle this with very trivial potential risks and superficial explanations, just saying we've been in this field for 10 years and we've never had a problem. We don't anticipate any problems. This is really unsatisfying. You want to take yourself to task a little bit more here and look at three different categories. And for me, the most interesting one is always the conceptual one. What if the data do not support your hypothesis? What do we get then? Is there anything useful that emerges? Um, Easier is technical limitations. There's always technical limitations to your approaches or your reagents. What orthogonal approaches can you consider? And finally, expertise. What are the limitations of your group and how will you mitigate those gaps? Uh, and just visually, I took this figure from a great paper from Lior Onn. We often think of science as moving in a straight line from A to B, and in part it's because it's presented that way in published papers. It moves very beautifully from question to answer. But in reality, science moves from A to this mess of a cloud where we don't know where we're going to emerge, and then finally, somewhere unexpected and cool, we end up on the other side. And this is what every reviewer knows. And so if you write your risk and mitigation strategies like this as a straight line, it looks naive. And if you write it like this, to some extent, you don't want to undermine your own proposal, but you want to write it honestly and show that that you're rigorous and scrutinizing your own work. So for each potential pitfall, you would describe briefly the nature of the pitfall, why it's unlikely, and this can't be just stating that. You need to support that with evidence and an alternative strategy. And this is a place to get creative and show your reviewer that you can think outside the box. Okay, so now I wanted to move to how to identify weaknesses in your proposal. And the best way to do that is to recreate the review process. One exercise you could do if you have the resources is to create a mock panel. So recruit 4 or 5 people. These could be mentees, they could be colleagues in your department, and you assign one as the lead reviewer who gets access to the full proposal and is nominated to present it to the group. And then the remaining people in the group are given just the summary and are told to ask questions and attack the proposal after the presenter presents it. And the important thing is that you stay silent and resist the urge to interrupt with an explanation or a defense. And the reason for that is it kind of destroys the whole experiment if you interrupt and clarify, because you wouldn't be able to do that in a real situation. So this kind of mock experience provides a lot of information. You'll see where the presenter hesitated, which suggests that they didn't quite understand your logic, what the group got wrong, which again says something was unclear about your presentation, and where people had to ask questions. So you can use all this information to modify your proposal and fill in those gaps. And of course, you should solicit feedback generously and hold it lightly. You can solicit feedback from friends who could read the proposal and tell you where they got lost. So you don't want to ask somebody, did you like it? Did you not like it? That's very vague feedback. You want to specifically ask, where did you stumble on this and did you buy it? Mentors and mentees can provide feedback on the rigor and the feasibility. And LLMs and other AI platforms like QED can help you assess whether you've clearly made clear claims or if there are any gaps in your logic. The thing is, you might not have friends, mentees, mentors available to, they might not have time, or you just might not have a large group of people to spend time on your proposal. And as good as LLMs and AI are, you can really go down rabbit holes where you're just creating something that is answering your own questions. It's very prompt dependent. So it's really important to get an outside view from a human being. And this is one of the reasons I co-founded Life Science Editors. So we're a team of 30 scientists. Many of us were at journals like Cell Science, Nature, Nature Cell Biology, PLOS Medicine, Cancer Cell. So just across the board of the life sciences. Some of us sat on NIH study sections and ERC panels, so we know what the review process is like. We know what reviewers are looking for, and we know how to engage reviewers and readers. Okay, so with all this feedback, it can be somewhat overwhelming, and you want to be judicious. You don't need to act on all of it. Uh, I would say that you would want to act on anything that two people raised independently, because that points to a recurring problem. Anywhere you are misunderstood. And so, for instance, in my experience, that might look like an edit where I altered the meaning of what you were trying to say. And that can be a frustrating experience, but what it can tell you is that the original phrasing was ambiguous. And so it's worth that conversation. And any place where someone phrased something or framed something better than you did, and that's okay. It's a great process, and it can be really enlightening to see how other people view your work and frame it. You might learn something fabulous from that. So, what to let go is like somebody's specific pet peeve, and there will always be that. So, just put that aside. It's nice to see, but you can put it aside. A point you disagree on. So, they might be right about something, but you're the one seeking funding, and you should be confident in your judgment as well. And any advice that would turn your proposal into someone else's, it's very tempting for people or for some people who are reading and commenting on a proposal to like just take it and run with it and turn it into something else. And it's nice, but that's probably not what you're looking for. And then it's really important to know when to stop. At some point, clarity stops increasing and it can potentially stop decreasing. You also, again, with all this feedback, you don't want to incorporate all the feedback and create this incoherent mess. So you want to ensure that you're still having a clean argument with your voice. And another time to stop is if you don't have time to digest the feedback. So if it's 2 days from submission, that's not the time to ask somebody to give deep feedback, because if you incorporate it and you don't understand it, it can make things worse. Okay, that's all I have, and I will now pass it back to Lior, or perhaps
Thank
Barak.
you, Angela. Thank you very much. So important and insightful. Um, okay, so let's hear from all of our participants. Which AI tools are you currently using? I I always like to see QED QED science getting getting some votes. But of course, Claude and ChatGPT at the top, as you would expect. Interesting to see Gemini not in the front of the line. We'll give it a few more seconds. Okay. QED science, very impressive. Of course, ChatGPT and Claude, as they probably deserve. Okay. Angela, can you please continue? Thank you. Okay, Barak, if you can please share with us some of your experience in submitting grants and how AI tools help you to do so, or well, they fall short.
Thank you, and thank you, Angela. I learned a lot from all your explanations. Okay, so I will try to express what my experience is with using AI. And so the first thing I would say is that we upload our grant to whatever favorite AI tool that we have. and we do a prompt and we ask it, be a reviewer, perhaps look at the weaknesses, the strengths. Maybe we upload instructions of the grant as well to help the AI understand what the grant is, what the reviewers will be looking for. And then we get a review. And sometimes, and this is also my experience with what my colleagues were saying when we were discussing these issues. The answer is that this AI is a real idiot. It didn't get it. I have this, in the grant. I have this in the figure. I explained this, and so on. When I experience this type of response from the AI, like a criticism about something that I thought I put in there, I try to think, drink a glass of water, take a deep breath, and think, if the AI didn't get it, maybe my reviewer won't get it. Now, hopefully our reviewers are very smart, capable, full-on concentrated peoples, but sometimes they're not. And as Angela mentioned, the reviewer should be able to skim the grant and get it, and hopefully like it. So this is one thing I would take, is one message I would take if using an AI tool. When the AI says something really stupid that you didn't get, reread what I wrote. I reread what I wrote, and I try to be objective and see, perhaps I didn't explain something very well. And this brings us to point number 2. So we have a logic in our mind that brings the whole grant together. We have a very deep insight. Hopefully, we have deep insights regarding our field. We know to great details all the intricate things that happen in our favorite signaling pathway, and our mind kind of bridges gaps that other people who are not as deeply expert on this will not see. So one of the things that AI can point out is that, you said A will cause B, but, this is not accurate. You need to have C and D in there as well. And we might think it's obvious, but in my experience, this is, again, a good place to stop and think that perhaps it's not as obvious as we thought that it is. Maybe this also touches Angela's point regarding writing to an expert versus a generalist. So it's a bit of an art to know where the line is, where to draw the line, and how to explain things. But in my experience, when an AI said that what we wrote is not accurate, we should stop and think whether it is accurate or not, or whether we do have to add to bridge the gaps in the mind of the reviewer that is not an expert and perhaps doesn't see the whole picture. The third point is that I can tell you a story. So a colleague, I was discussing with her AI reviewers, and she's working now on an ERC grant. And she said, the AI told me it gave me a bunch of comments, and I implemented everything. And then when I reread the grant, it had no soul. So I would see the AI review, and this goes to a regular LLM or even QED, as notes you get from a colleague. And at the end of the day, as Angela mentioned, you make the decision. So the fact that it's a machine, and it's a very smart machine because it knows a lot of stuff, doesn't mean that it's right, and doesn't mean that this is the voice you want to have for your grant. So maybe it's very important to detail the power analysis and exactly how many mice and flies you're going to use for your experiments, but maybe it's not important to go down to these details on every point you have in your grant. So please use your judgment and keep your voice in the grant, because I think this is very important. And next slide, please.
Sorry, now I want to hear from you. What do you see as the number one impact of using AI during your grant submissions? various answers. We'll give it 10 more seconds. Okay, so most people use it to accelerate their writing process and to be more thorough and to provide additional objective feedback, as we discussed today, and truly aligns with what both Angela and Barak said. Thank you.
Okay. So, getting feedback is hard. Getting feedback is hard because giving feedback is hard. Reading a grant and going deep into it and trying to understand it and then providing feedback, it takes time. We and our colleagues don't have a lot of time. And I think this is one of the strengths of using AI. Of course, colleague feedback from colleagues is the best. It's the highest quality feedback that you can get. But the nice thing about LLMs and AI and QED is that they don't get tired. You can upload a drafty draft. You can brainstorm ideas, and they'll just come back to you as many times as you like. So what I do is I take my grant, I put in the aims, and I start to use AI and get feedback. And the questions we try to answer is are these objective falsifiable? So you want the reviewer to get your hypothesis and see that if you can really test them and decide what is the truth. And do the methods answer the questions? So this is actually, AI is pretty good at it, and you suggest, I'm going to answer this question, and I'm going to use these methods. And QED is, in particular, I think that's one of the strengths of QED. So it breaks down what you propose to answer, and it goes into the proposed experiments and tries to see if there are answers. Controls and statistics are also, AI is pretty good at that. So this is a good place to get some feedback about statistics. Scope. Now, scope is not an easy one, but actually my personal experience is I got a grant rejected, and the AI, actually it was QED, told me, I'm just focused on this one protein. Why not test all of them? I'm like, this idiot. It's hard enough to check this one. But actually, 2 reviewers came back and wanted, and they had concerns that I'm focused only on one. So apparently, AIs are not so bad about trying to guess what is the scope and if it's sufficient. I wouldn't say take all their advice at face value, and if they tell you the scope is not enough, or you're not focused enough, because that's also a word reviewers love to use. But do take it into consideration if you get if you get feedback about the scope. Does one failed experience sink the plan? So this is, of course, a big one. If you have aim 1, 2, and 3, and if aim 1 doesn't pan out, 2 and 3 are pointless. I'm going to make this transgenic mouse or fly in aim 1, and then I'm going to use it in aim 2 and 3. And without this, there's no point for the grant. And of course, this is a bad idea. Pitfalls and alternative explicit. So this is also a bit of an art. Some people, there are different styles. Some people put pitfalls in every sub-aim. Some people put pitfalls on every aim. Some people put pitfalls on the whole grant. But I think AI is not so bad in determining if the pitfalls that you propose are really well articulated. Do the tandem data support feasibility? So here is also a strength of AI. They can actually look at the preliminary data and tell you what is missing in the preliminary data. And when they tell you what is missing, then of course It's not always possible to do the relevant experiments, but at least you can address it and own your faults, because I think this is something reviewers appreciate. So you can say, we did this and that. We have to do also, these other experiments in order to be able to consolidate that our idea is supported. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Barak. Angela, can you please press? Okay. So I think what we can take from both what Angela said and what Barak said is that, of course, using AI is useful, but we need to use it as a critical reader, not as an authority. Okay, use AI to surface gaps and inconsistencies, question your internal logic, test whether whatever it is you're trying to say is understandable. Generic questions reviewers might ask, okay, but don't use it to validate your science. That's your job. It does not replace a domain expert review. It will probably be better. Okay, so it can work alongside a real human review, but not fully replace it. Of course, don't use it to fill in the gaps. Use it to find the gaps, but then bridge them yourself. And of course, don't use it to make your final decisions for you. Always stay in the driver's seat. Angela, can you please press again? Thank you. Okay. So now, as promised, I will do a very short demonstration of what we do in our in QED, in our grant review tool. It's just we're very short on time, but I hope I can go over all the important points. And before I start, I need to say two important things. One, if you're not familiar with the QED platform and you're not a user, I'm just reminding that it's completely free. Go to our website, register, and you can try it out. Secondly, what you see here are two files, a grant and a manuscript. Both belong to our founder, Professor Oded Rechavi. Of course, he agreed that I will show them today. We will never show data of users. Okay. So if you want to review a grant, just upload one. You will have it here in your project page. Angela, click, please. Thank you. Okay. So what we do here is we take your grant and we deconstruct it to its building blocks. We take out what we interpret as your core research objective, a description of a high-level plan, which is kind of a high-level story of what you're trying to say and the way that you describe you're going to do it. Then what we think your aims are, okay, what we understand, and then, of course, sub-aims. I just want to say that in this part, okay, just from this structure of your building blocks, you can already gain some value. If the core objective that we write here is not what you aimed, you would probably need to go back to your grant proposal and see if you're truly conveying what you're trying to convey. Same for the high-level plan. If the detail that we wrote are inaccurate, the detail that you wrote are probably inaccurate. So just use this thing to see how a neutral reviewer would perceive your grant proposal. Okay, and for each one of these sections, we extract weaknesses, okay, things that we see as weaknesses. And going through this structure, if we go to the top and then go down in this tree structure, so in the top, you will have more high-level weaknesses. In the core objective, we will have weaknesses that are more about your perceived novelty and potential impact. If you go further down to the high-level plan, it's issues that we find with the way you describe the full plan, things like the relationship between your different aims, or how you describe your maybe holes in your full story. Okay, and then as you go further down, you will have more specific, more granular weaknesses about specific aims, maybe methodological issues. things like that. Okay, if you press Angela, please. Okay, here, for example, you can see how it looks like. For example, here you have the core research objective weaknesses, 8 weaknesses. The top are more novelty related, the bottom are more impact related. And you can see one example, please. Angela, can you click? Okay, great. For each, thank you, sorry. For each weakness, we give a full description and why we think this is a weakness. And of course, we offer a suggested plan, which is a direction of what we think you should adjust. And when it comes to novelty gaps, it will be more about your framing. But then if you go to things that are related to a specific aim, it will be to a preliminary data or limitations and more specific issues. Of course, at any point, you can leave us feedback. I truly encourage you to leave us feedback if you like or dislike the weaknesses and the plans, because it helps us improve. Another click, please. Okay, if you do find our weaknesses useful, true and useful, and maybe even implement one of our plans, you can go back to the main screen and then upload a new version, and you will get a new report that is relative to the one you had before. If you fixed an issue, you will not see it here again. Another click, please. Okay, just one. I will take my last minute to talk about. So probably most of you know our manuscript review tool. We just talked about our grant review tool. We have one last new tool that we're launching very soon. It's called the Insights Feed. It gives you personalized reading recommendations based on your public publications and the files that you upload to the QED platform. So that's both your manuscript and your most relevant grants, which is probably the most relevant things you're working on that other people don't know you're working on. And you will get recommendations that include manuscripts, preprints, conference abstracts. Okay, you can even find our top preprint selections highlighted here, which is pretty nice. Another click, please. Okay, so we have, as promised, last 10 minutes to questions. I will go over the Q&A and I'll direct the questions to the people that we find relevant. Okay, we have a lot of questions. Okay. Okay, so there is a question that repeats a lot, and it's probably directed at me. It's about the security of the data that people upload to LLMs in general and QED specifically. So I can't answer for other LLMs, but I can answer for QED. So we hold the highest standard of security in QED. We have, if you're familiar with the professional terminology, so we are SOC 2 compliant, GDPR compliant, ISO 27001 certified. These are all security standards. That means that there's no chance of your data to leak out once you upload it to the QED platform. We do not look at it. We do not use it unless you ask us to. We don't use it to train our models. What we do use is your feedback. So we do our thing, you give us feedback, we improve. Okay, that was the short and the easy answer. Okay, so there are a few questions directed at Angela about styling. For example, there's a question from Mustafa about bullet versus paragraphs. He likes using bullet points, but it seems like the scientific community is more in a paragraph, like the paragraph type of writing.
It's true. I mean, for the most part, I see paragraphs, and I think paragraphs are easier to read a narrative. bullet points can be useful if you are listing things like cell lines or tools or models. But if you're trying to make a logical argument, I think it's better to use a paragraph. Um, it's actually easier to read in the sense that if you were to look at a proposal that was all bullet points, it just wouldn't, it would be, you'd be filling in a lot of the blanks yourself. And again, I think this goes back to not making the reviewer have to do too much work. So bullet points are okay sometimes, but for the most part, when you're writing an argument or even an approach, I would suggest using paragraphs.
Great. Thank you. We also have another very interesting question, in my opinion. Does the fate of your proposal sometimes depend on the reader? What if the reviewer is a bad reader?
I mean, yes, I would say I mean, this is one reason you have multiple reviewers and that you have a study section. Um, but it's stressful as a scientist having to submit to either your manuscript or proposal and rely on that lead reviewer. So again, just giving them as much, making their job as easy as possible is helpful. Barak, I think you had a comment about that. Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Angela. Let's see, what else do we have here? Whoa, the questions are piling up. Um, we're asked if it's possible to control which uploaded documents are used for the insights feed. The answer is no, but if you upload things from the same subjects and your public data is related to the same subject, you will probably get more recommendations on that subject, but also interaction with the feed adjusts your recommendations. For example, if you rank the relevance of the recommendation that you like it, you will get more similar recommendations. So that's a way to do that. A lot of questions about data protection. Okay, so we're very close to the end. Angela, did you stop presenting? Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. I stopped
Okay.
sharing my screen because I thought it would be next.
It's just in the okay. So it's just in the last okay, we do have okay, in the last slide there's our contact information.
Oh, right.
Share it for a
Okay,
second.
hang on one second.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see here.
Okay, we'll take a moment to answer a few questions, like generally answer a few questions together. So there are a lot of questions about what QED can and cannot do. So we mainly focus on life sciences. I do know that people from other fields said that they get some value from uploading grants and manuscripts in different fields. If for some reason you try and you get blocked, you can always send us an email and we will upload your proposal anyway. I think it's the most beneficial when you have a first draft. That's true both for manuscripts and for grants. When you have a first draft, when you're still open to making adjustments, upload it and see what you get. And then you can use the upload new version feature to try new versions as you progress in the grant writing process. There are several unanswered questions in the Q&A, but you have our contact details here. Please feel free to send us more questions. We will be very happy to answer if you feel like that we did not. We will also send you the recommendation of this meeting to all the people that register, not just the ones that attended. And you will also get the checklist created by Angela and Barak. It's a practical grant application checklist, especially relevant for the ERC applications that are coming that are right around the corner. And I really hope it will give you a practical way to stress test your own proposals before submission. Thank you very much for attending. And thank you to our wonderful speakers for your insight and very, very useful tips. You get a lot of applause from the audience. Well deserved. Thank you very much, and please do not hesitate to contact us.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.